Welcome to the Daily Slant, powered by Pro Football Focus and brought to you by DraftKings.com. I'm your host, Josh Hayes, joined as always by my co-host, Renee Miller. You can always find Renee Miller's work over at Pro Football Focus, of course, along with ESPN, RotoWorld, and you can follow her on Twitter at Renee Miller01, and you can also find me on Twitter at Josh Hayes FS. Renee, welcome to the last regular season of 2015.
I know. Welcome, I guess. I don't know. It's shocking. There's so much else going on right now this time of year that you kind of forget, like, wow, playoffs are starting next week. But
yeah, you know what? It's going to be a completely different ball game come next week when we take, all the teams who are sad and starting to get ready for the NFL draft and free agency and just say, no soup for you.
No.
Go to the sidelines here, and then we're left with NFL playoff DFS. But that's not this week. That's next week. So we'll go ahead and get into that. But speaking of DFS and the action, we got to let you know that it's still going strong, still full swing, and it already feels like the playoffs in the NFL because of 1 week fantasy at DraftKings.com. With millions being won each week, every play in every game could take you closer to a life-changing payday. This isn't fantasy as usual. This is DraftKings. Welcome to the big time. Hurry to DraftKings.com now and use the promo code PFF for a free entry with your first deposit in this Sunday's $1 Million Fantasy Football Contest. Enter PFF for free entry now at DraftKings.com. That's DraftKings.com. All right, Renee, we'll go ahead and start at the top here, like we always do at the quarterback position for Week 17. A lot of interesting options here as well. A couple big-time guys who let us down last week. Well, so let's talk about them. Cam Newton, Ben Roethlisberger, both in plus matchups. A couple other guys here projected in the top 5 that may not have been last week, namely Eli Manning. How do you feel about how the top options at QB are shaking up for Week 17?
Yeah, I was let down by Aaron Rodgers a little bit. I used him in a tournament lineup. I think he's going to be very low owned this week coming off that horrific outing against Arizona. But I think that's not how Green Bay wants to enter the playoffs. And I would be shocked if Aaron Rodgers didn't have a really nice bounce back week. So I'll be investing again. Ben Roethlisberger let us down too. But same situation. They're actually fighting for their playoff life this week. Again, away from home is not my favorite place to use Big Ben, but Cleveland is a really nice matchup, and I like him to bounce back too. At the very top, I don't think Tampa Bay is a awesome matchup. I mean, they're no New York Giants, New Orleans Saints style defense, but at home, I think Cam will be fine. I probably won't invest a ton. I'm not super enthusiastic about Cam Newton, but I do think Tom Brady could have a nice day in Miami.
All right, so I agree with you there as well. Miami, they've been playing decent defense but can't score at all. So, and I wonder which way Bill Belichick is going to lean. He always leans towards playing Brady in Week 17, even when it's never mattered. So there's that piece of it. But I also wonder if you get any one of the wide receivers back that are so crucial to their offense, like Danny Amendola and Julian Edelman, who could make a big amount of difference there for Week 17. So, I mean, they're still playing for home field throughout the playoffs. So the game does mean something, but I wonder what sort of balance we're looking for. So I'm going to sort of reserve my GPP lineups. He's not going to be a cash game option for me with Tom Brady, but I do want some exposure to that Miami game because I think it is important for them. Cleveland, Ben Roethlisberger, he torched them up last time there as well, and he wasn't even scheduled to play. He was playing on a high ankle sprain that he was supposed to be resting and went for 379 and 3 scores. The Cleveland defense has played better as of late, but they've played really good defense against some suspect teams. I mean, Kansas City isn't suspect overall, but they were
conservative.
Yeah, they were, it's Alex Smith, obviously, and they were playing from ahead the entire time. And, they were giving Cleveland plenty of trouble with them in their ability to pass ball. The only thing they could do is let Johnny scramble for 100 yards. So that's a different situation here. For me, I'm actually invested in Cam. I think I like the fact that he sort of had a bad week because I think some people may be off him a little bit this week. But Tampa Bay grades out pretty well in terms of, pass coverage, dead last in the league. Run defense, also dead last. And I know Jonathan Stewart is maybe expected to practice or play. I have serious concerns about how much they actually use him. and Cam Newton has averaged 10 rushing attempts in out of the past 4 games. So if for some reason he's not able to get it done through the air, and I don't know why he wouldn't against that secondary, then he's got the rushing option there as well. So I do love the dual threat. The other thing I will say too is, aside from them playing for home field throughout the playoffs, which is obviously important for Carolina and the Panthers, Cam's also playing to lock up sort of the MVP consideration here. Sort of had a little bit of a down week, and maybe 2 down weeks in a row could sort of push Carson Palmer up ahead of him, who I also like in this matchup for this week. I know it is Seattle, but they are at home. So I'm going to have some exposure to Carson Palmer. I'll have some exposure to Cam Newton. Actually, for the price at $6,500, I think Carson Palmer is probably going to be my top cash option for this week. And I'm going to be sprinkling in some Eli Manning at $5,600 against Philadelphia. How do you feel about those 2 options?
Yeah, if we go down another tier, Carson Palmer was able to beat the Seattle defense thanks to the Cardinals' ability to spread the ball around, and I think that'll be in play again for sure. So I'm fine with Carson Palmer. I'm not going to use a player because I think he's playing for an MVP award. I think that's it's just not the way I approach the game with the narratives. But Cam Newton did have one of his worst passing games of the season against Tampa Bay, threw for only 124 yards against them the first time these teams met. And they are fairly, maybe just slightly below average in terms of fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks. So I'm a little less enthusiastic about Cam. I think it's more important for this team to go into the postseason healthy than to try. I think Cam has earned the MVP award. I'll say if it matters, but that's certainly not why I would want to use him. Eli Manning, I think, is in a good spot for sure. Sam Bradford too, actually, if you're into playing a lot of tournaments.
As we are.
Both of these teams have very beatable secondaries, so there should be a lot of passing yards and touchdowns, hopefully, in the Philadelphia-New York Giants game. So I agree with you there. Ryan Fitzpatrick doesn't seem to know what a bad matchup looks like. He just keeps doing it week after week after week, and his price just stays in a very usable place. I think he's going to be solid again too. Ooh, cat sighting.
That's a ringing endorsement for Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, they came racing up as soon as I said his name.
He's like, oh yes, Ryan Fitzpatrick. I heard my GPP QB.
They should do that now that they're here. I can talk about AJ McCarron and the Bengals because they're distantly related.
Oh, really?
To the Tiger.
Oh. Okay. All right. Fair enough.
But AJ McCarron has been pretty impressive against some pretty rough defenses, so he should have a little bit easier time against Baltimore.
Tell that to Big Ben last week. Tell that to Big Ben last week.
Well, yeah. The risk is always there with these AFC North games of being low scoring. I think we talked about it on the show that at least I really prefer investing, 100% in the Steelers offense when they're in Pittsburgh versus when they're on the road. But this time the Bengals will be at home, and Baltimore has been thrown on. Yeah, we can tell it to Big Ben, and maybe that will have people not using McCarron. But
sure.
He seems more and more comfortable each week.
All right, yeah. AJ McCarron's got to get through that MRI for his wrist issue, so I think he sounds like he wants to play, but he's got to get that injury cleared first before we can use him. So he definitely is on the radar for me. I've been targeting Baltimore quite a bit, and I feel a little bit safer about the Bengals offensive line more so than I do about the Pittsburgh O-line there as well. So I'm with you for the most part, provided he gets cleared. Wanted to quickly ask you about 2 guys here. Blake Bortles at 6,700. Bad matchup on the road at Houston, who's done a good job rushing the passer. We've seen J.J. Watt really elevate themselves and sort of the defense carry them to the lead in this division. But Blake Bortles, if you take a look at the game logs here for the past 5 games, the opponents, let's be honest, not good. Okay, they're the best of this group here is Atlanta out of the group. Then he's got Chargers, Titans, Colts, and Saints. All guys that he lit up pretty well. Here's the thing that I'm struggling with. 1, the Houston defense on the road. Okay, and 2, Pro Football Focus in terms of their PFF QB rating hates Blake Bortles. They do not care what he has done this season. They're like, nope, you're still going to be out hanging out within Jay Cutler, Ryan Tannehill, Sam Bradford territory, 20th overall in QB rating on PFF. Do I need to put any stock in that against a good quality team, or do you feel like it's just going to be pass-a-rama and Blake Bortles is still an option in Week 17 for GPPs?
So here's where it's important to remember that PFF grades are based on actual football, not fantasy, and Bortles makes a lot of mistakes. The last time he played Houston, he was fantastic fantasy-wise, but he did throw 3 interceptions. So the fact that he threw for over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns more than made up for that. But when it comes to grading the way that PFF does it, that's gonna be a negative day. Of course, it's a positive for fantasy, and that was in Jacksonville when they played. So I have a little bit of concern facing, because I think also the Houston defense has evolved a little bit over the season, and they're better now than they were in Week 6. But my concerns are, I don't know, fairly mild, I think.
Limited at best. Okay, so you're still in on Bortles is basically what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a team that throws the ball a lot, and Bortles has found a way to succeed despite making mistakes, because they keep putting the ball in his hand and he throws it a ton. I don't have the per game pass attempt averages in front of me, but I would have to guess that he's near the top.
Should Blake Bortles be mad? I heard this literally was an actual fight, that when you Google Blake Bortles' girlfriend is the first search that comes up. So she's actually higher priority than. Did you hear about that? And that was actually like a real argument between them.
Between him and his girlfriend.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
He's very pretty. I mean,
he should be flattered. Never mind that he's having a breakout season with 35 touchdowns and adding 10 points to his career QB rating, non-PFF QB rating. It's all about his girlfriend, apparently, according to Google. So win-win for Blake Bortles. Just consider it that way.
That's right.
The one thing I do want to say here about the quarterback position here is there's a couple of home run GPP options that we can sort of make a case for, too. You're talking about A.J. McCarron. I want to talk about Johnny Manziel at 5,100 at home against Pittsburgh. Buy or sell on him in what could be the final deciding nail in the coffin for which way the Browns go at the quarterback position here after this performance.
I mean, buy in a GPP, the matchup is good, but he's a complete wild card. He's not going to run for 108 yards against Pittsburgh. They're a good run defense, and we'll see what he can get done through the air. I'm not enthusiastic outside of the matchup. And again, the narrative that it's his last chance with Cleveland doesn't sway me really.
Okay, so he's a wild card, which is what you're saying. He's loco, as in like for loco, basically, is what you're trying to tell me.
What about the who's going to play quarterback for Indianapolis this week? They've got a good matchup.
That's a great question. We've got some good options here. Jim Harbaugh, I think he's got an off week right now. Michigan's not playing this weekend, right? Or are they? I have no idea.
They play New Year's Day or New Year's Eve.
Oh, so he's got some time. When's New Year's? New Year's is Friday.
Thursday. I think he plays New Year's Eve.
Oh, he's got plenty of time. So the game's not till Sunday. So suit captain, come back up. One game contract, and then he gets a little NFL refresher course that he can bring back to his team out there in Michigan. Who else can we go with? Jim Sorgi. I'm pretty sure he's bagging groceries or doing something of the sort right now, playing some golf.
Wow, blast from the past.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's a great question. I heard some like emergency activate Andrew Luck for Week 17 stuff coming across the wire here. That's got to be not happening.
I can't see that happening.
Does it matter to them? The Colts even alive for a playoff spot right now? Do you know by chance? I know this really doesn't matter too much for DFS purposes. Other than that, I'm only probably planning to play Frank Gore. That's Frank Gore is like my lock. I locked him first into my PFF punt article this week because he's so cheap, and no matter who the quarterback is, they've got to give like a pretty good run lean. I would imagine in this game here as well. Now, here's the other thing too.
The Colts have faint hopes. So you did that. I locked in the Tennessee defense.
Smart on both counts. Yes, very nice. The one thing I want to say about this is, do you buy into any scenario here where the Tennessee Titans blow their draft spot and win a game here against a banged up team here that who has no idea who they're playing at quarterback for Week 17? Do you think there's any merit to that? Can we say arrow up on Frank Gore or anybody else? Because that's an important thing. They win, they lose their number one draft pick spot. I know that everybody says no, there's no such thing as tanking in the NFL, but I mean, we're in a real scenario here. Win or lose, it's going to change their fate in a pretty significant way. Your thoughts on that?
I'm not going to try to speculate on whether a team will try to lose on purpose. I don't think so, but I don't think they have a great shot at winning, to be honest. Mariota is still not 100%, and he does not play well when he's hurting. So I'm almost, let's say, I'm equally enthusiastic about the Colts defense.
Okay.
That's about all I'm taking from this game is defense.
All right, fair enough. I think Frank Gore is the one safe bet in that offense. I have no trust in any other offensive weapon. He did show out well in a similar situation last week. I believe he had 20 plus fantasy points on DraftKings.
Not much, yeah.
So on the offensive side, I'm with you, and on the defensive side, I think you're very smart to take shares of both sides. So, all right, that wraps up quarterback here. Let's go ahead and move on to the running back position here. Once again, we have Devontae Freeman up top, 7,600. They're facing New Orleans. That looks like a pretty good matchup overall. Didn't wow anybody against Carolina. 18 fantasy points on DraftKings. Didn't kill you. Didn't win you a GPP. So there's one of your top options. And the other two that we have is D'Angelo Williams, who went for a big performance there, sort of got all the points you hoped were heading towards Big Ben's way last week. 36 fantasy points on DraftKings. Great matchup, as good as any matchup on the board against Cleveland, although it is on the road, but probably doesn't matter so much. And then we have Adrian Peterson playing in a all-important matchup against the Green Bay Packers here. He ends up finding the end zone and goes for 21 fantasy points. First time in a month that he cracks the 20-point mark in terms of fantasy points overall, but we know sort of the offensive and defensive struggles that the Green Bay Packers have been having in late. So where do you anchor yourself among these guys?
You didn't mention Todd Gurley, who also gets a good matchup in San Francisco. They do play a little bit better at home, but they still are, tops in terms of fantasy points allowed to running backs. So add his name to the bunch, and he's come through a bunch of difficult matchups pretty good lately. So I'm fine with any or all of those. I think there's a ton, unlike last week when I said I don't know who I'm going to use at running back this week. I think there's a lot of ways that you can go, whether you want to spend or save. So
all right, so I know this is
no problem using Freeman in cash games, for example, or any of them really.
Okay, so I know this is a tough question to ask because for varying reasons we can make a case for all of these players, but let's try to power rank these there as well. Devontae Freeman, D'Angelo, AP, and Gurley.
I go Freeman, Williams, Peterson, Gurley.
Okay, so you have them in the exact order that I read them, which happens to be which happens to be the exact order that I have them listed in the Pro Football Focus Fantasy Labs Optimizer. So
makes D'Angelo Williams the best value there. We all picked him second. He's $500 less than Freeman. So.
Yes, and at Cleveland, who has no clue how to stop the run. So I'm with you 110%. If I had to pick one guy out of the group that I'm probably staking my claim with, it's probably going to be D'Angelo Williams. Cleveland could be behind by multiple touchdowns at halftime, and they could just run D'Angelo there in late third, fourth quarter and sort of burn clock and try to do whatever they can to secure their playoff position. So I could see that definitely being the case. All right, now so we're out of the first tier into the second tier. We've got some interesting players. David Johnson, who to me, I think we're talking about somebody who's going to be drafted in the top 3 to 5 in season-long fantasy leagues next season there. Maybe that sounds a little bit outlandish, but another 21 fantasy points against the Green Bay Packers, game well in hand. The only thing that hurt him is that they kept scoring on defense overall. Like the Packers felt like they had like all the possession time in the second half because everything was a pick six. So he couldn't even get on the field in the second half. Otherwise, he probably would have had a better performance. So I'm not going to knock him at all for that. Tim Hightower in a good matchup against Atlanta at 5,500. Those are a couple of the top options here. Darren McFadden, who is also super cheap, could be playing, and as to whether or not, depending on what they do with Redskins starters, there's could be playing against some backups here on both sides of the ball. He's 4,900. Any of those guys interest you in the second tier, or somebody maybe else that I did not mention?
Yep, all those guys interest me. You know how much I hate Darren McFadden, so we cannot discuss him. What you said is true. James White is the only one in this tier that I would add that we didn't talk about. But Tim Hightower, oh my gosh, how impressive has he been? And this is a great spot to use him in. David Johnson gets the tougher matchup. I think that's going to scare a lot of people away, that he's facing the Seattle defense. And with so many other weapons, I'm not sure that they will rely on the run game in Arizona this week. But aside from that, he's been terrific. He's been amazing. But I put Hightower and White a little bit above him just because of the matchup.
All right, fair enough. And another guy that I want you to mention too that performed decent for the price, didn't wow you, but showed up well enough, was Carlos Williams for the Buffalo Bills. They sort of got behind and had to go full pass mode there with Washington running away with that game. But there's a guy that interests me. The New York Jets do have a good run defense overall, but Carlos Williams has, as we've mentioned before, and I mentioned in my article, does have, I believe, I don't know about last week because I didn't look at the box score. I apologize. I did not see that game, but had two of touchdowns in the receiving game, and I think both were 20 yards or more. So he's definitely a factor in the passing game, even if he's not able to run between the tackles and get it done on the ground. So another guy in that price point that I'm very interested in. Now, anybody sliding down further that we need to talk about at the running back position before I move forward?
I mean, the Denver guys, we talked about them the last time they played San Diego, and it was a disaster. CJ Anderson is really cheap, 3,700. Yes. Mm-hmm. It's worth a shot in certain contests, I think. And the other one, Theo Riddick, seems to meet value just about every week. He's only 4,000, or at least not kill your lineup. Not a ton of upside in the Detroit running game, but again, they're facing Chicago this week, which is a nice matchup for him. And he seems to be the one kind of consistent volume guy. 7 catches again last week. Yeah,
too bad he can't get more than a handful of carries. It's like he's not allowed for some reason. Like he did something wrong.
7 carries, 7 receptions last week.
Yeah. The guy who's so effective out of the passing game just for some reason has no idea how to carry the ball. I mean, it blows me. If you think he's that effective, maybe try. Same thing just drives you crazy with the Cleveland Browns and Duke Johnson. Like, the guy's so good out of the passing game. Like how about just, if you're upset about the running game production that you've in limited fashion that you've given him, how about not running that guy up the middle? Just running him off tackle or a swing or a toss or something else that's similar to how you feature him in the passing game. Yep. Some of these offensive play calls just drive me crazy. I could see Theo Riddick being a much more valuable player if they would sort of work the screen game into some of those running plays that are very similar. Yep. So which means you just really can't trust Isaiah Crowell or Duke Johnson, although Isaiah Crowell has popped up with some crazy games here, and it is a decent matchup. I still won't touch him overall. And the fact that Johnny Manziel is actually running and broke the Cleveland Browns quarterback rushing record for their franchise is another reason that you may not want as many shares of the running back situation too, especially if they're going to start calling more wildcat or zone reads. So a little pistol offense going on for them, and that was the one thing that kept them in the game last week. Last guy I want to mention here, you can call me crazy. I don't really care because it's a GPP only play and it's cheap, is DeMarco Murray. He's going to make my GPP punter article this week. 4K. It's against the Giants. I understand that people have been burned so many times, so many levels there here as well. But against the Washington Redskins, in a game that was, that sort of got away from them, he did enough damage in the passing game, and he's still the guy. I mean, although it's the the rushing totals look completely ugly because we know how far behind they were. He was the guy who got the most touches overall. I'm willing to take a share or two just because it's the Giants and the Giants D is bad and it's cheap for a GPP only. That's my only recommendation there as well. Do you have any problem with him as a flyer, or am I?
We can have. I never remember our side bets, by the way, but I'll take a Ryan Matthews, DeMarco Murray side bet.
All right, as long as I don't.
I was gonna mention Ryan Matthews for all the same reasons. I just think he has
performed better. I will say that Ryan Matthews, I believe, I'm with you, has outperformed Marco Murray. As long as there's not a bow on the line, I'm willing to take that.
No, just friendly.
Okay, friendly bet for 2015. I'm willing to lose that one at 4K. What is Ryan Matthews' price, by the way?
36.
Oh, even better. So, like, if you like Renee's side and you don't agree with me and you're listening to the show, you can save yourself $400. So there you have it. All right, we move on to the wide receiver position here. There's this guy, Antonio Brown. I don't know if you heard of him. He's kind of good. 9,300 is a steep price to pay. He threw up a little bit of a dud, which I like. I look for these spots when they happen because it happened 2 weeks ago against the Cincinnati Bengals. People are like, I paid 8,900 for 87 and no scores, and I'm very disappointed. Now he jumps back up against the Cleveland defense here after throwing up that dud. Some people may be put off by the price tag, and Ben Roethlisberger and sort of that level of mistrust. Are you back in this week, or do you want to go in a different direction?
No, I'm in. I'm fine. I was going to be in again on Antonio Bryant too. Or I'm sorry, ESPN wrote that in my article last week, or in my tweet about my article last week, and it's totally stuck with my head. I've said it like 5 times. Martavis Bryant, who really killed a lot of my lineups last weekend. But yeah, this Steelers team is not going to stay down. They're going to bounce back. They are an offensive powerhouse, and it's going to come back out. They want that playoff spot, and they're going to fight for it. So, Antonio Brown is the clear path to getting there.
All right, and anybody who, for whatever reason, wants to fade it, fine with me if that's the direction you want to go, as long as you're heading in the Julio Jones or Odell Beckham Jr. Direction as well. And I'm actually still okay with Houston on the opposite side of DeAndre Hopkins there as well. Now, I'm going to sort of ask you the same question.
If Hoyer's back, I'm in on DeAndre Hopkins, but
no trust in B Weeds, huh? Brandon Weeden, 27.7 fantasy points.
Comes through this fine. I mean, he's looking for AJ Green all the time, and he's $2,000 cheaper than those guys, $1,500 at least. So,
all right, fair enough. That's a very fair point. All right, so I'm guessing. You know what I'll do? I'll take him off the board, and I'm going to put another. Well, I'm just going to leave him in there anyway. All right, let me give you. Okay, first of all, let me ask you: do you have Antonio Brown ranked over Odell Beckham Jr. for Week 17?
Ooh. No, I think Odell Beckham Jr. is going to come out so ferocious this week, and it just attack this. I think Eli and Odell Beckham Jr. are going to. I think the Giants are going to be the highest scoring team. Let's say.
All right, so major exposure for you to OBJ in Week 17. Yeah. All right, so then I'll ask you the question.
Randall trolling everyone with like 2 touchdowns this week after everyone used him last week.
Well, I didn't do much better. I said, "Hey, Will Ty's my guy." Remember? And
that was a loss.
Well, nice job, Will Ty. Thank you so much. All right, so let's power rank this here. Antonio Brown, Julio, Beckham, Hopkins, AJ Green. I have in the top 5 with apologies to Brandon Marshall.
Ooh, so yeah, Brandon Marshall should be in there too. That's tough. I'm going to go Beckham, Brown, Green, Julio. I'd put Marshall ahead of Hopkins.
Okay, so there you go, 5, 6. There's the top 6, and there's a very complete first tier that you can sort of move around pieces and say, all right, if I for some reason can't afford Julio Jones, I can go up or down to Brandon Marshall at 7,900. Renee's favorite place, 7,500 for AJ Green, provided that McCarron plays. There's a couple of different directions that we can go in. So we're into the second tier now here. Who are you looking for to make this roster? That isn't in that top 6 that we just mentioned?
I like the Oakland guys. I like Cooper and Crabtree in the mid-tier. They're 6,000 and 5,900 respectively. I think Jarvis Landry could be valuable again. Miami's at home. You know, you can throw on New England, and they're going to have to, I'm guessing, to beat the angry Pats, or try to anyways. I'll go Emmanuel Sanders for the third week in a row. That's you're so tempted by Hilton and Moncrief, but the way, like we already talked about, I can't touch the Indy passing game.
Okay, fair enough. This is splitting hairs here. But I want to quickly mention this to the listeners out there who, for whatever reason, haven't joined Pro Football Focus in their subscription tool, because the wide receiver cornerback matchup chart is one of the single best things that is ever available every week. And and I've saved myself from so many mistakes by taking a look at these and made such differences in my DFS lineups by taking advantage of under-owned players or individual matchups that you can sort of take a look at. So for what it's worth, Mike Clay has Antonio Brown, Julio, and AJ Green and Hopkins by 1 grade point, mind you, over Odell Beckham Jr. So that, and the range of that is 96 to 90. So they're all close and they're all in the top 8. But for what it's worth, Antonio Brown and Julio and Green, your boy, edge out OBJ, your number 1 pick. So there's a quick little preview for you. But the reason why I brought that up, by the way, is because I just wanted to tell everybody out there that I don't care about what Doug Baldwin's done the last 5 or 6 weeks. I'm riding with him until the wheels fall off. He's got another top 8 matchup, or is it top 8, top 10? Let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, top 8. Top 8
what do
matchup.
You sort by?
I'm sorry?
What do you sort by?
I sort by grade. Oh, you know what? I should have been sorting by advantage.
I sort by advantage because it takes into consideration the defenders, the defender's grade as well.
Okay, you know what? And then if that's
the advantage, you get a more complete picture. The grade just tells how good the receiver has been. The advantage takes into consideration how good the defender has been too.
You're right, my fault. I had normally in previous weeks been sorting by advantage, but either way, it actually boosts Doug Baldwin's value up because he jumps him from 8th to 4th overall against Gerard Powers here.
We're looking at something totally different. How is this possible? I don't have him at all anywhere near the top.
Are you sorting by advantage on the wide receiver side or on the defender side?
There's only one advantage column in the middle of the table.
Oh, right. Yeah. I have I don't know. I mean, I just pulled this wide receiver quarterback chart. They are playing Seattle.
I've got him against Justin Bethel.
I haven't projected.
It's a plus 16 advantage for Baldwin, but he's like 30th maybe in my table.
I have him with a 44 grade projected against Gerard Powers.
Weird.
Yeah, so, very weird. Okay. Either way, even if he was down in the 30s, given the price and the production that he's to me, he's matchup proof. And Russell Wilson is the one guy that he can produce and trust with. So, I mean, even if I didn't take the grading factor into account, he's going to be a number 2 wide receiver for me. Going back to November 29th, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, no less than 20.5 fantasy points in any matchup overall, and he's gone for 32, 28, and 41 in 3 of the past 5 weeks as well. So, and I think there's going to be a lot of passing that's going to need to be done in this matchup against Arizona for them to keep pace with what is probably the best team in the NFC in my mind. I like Arizona better than Carolina. For those people who care. So Doug Baldwin's
I'll take the Arizona receivers over Doug Baldwin. I'll take Brown or Floyd in the value range.
Okay, so well, you know what? Taking price into account, then Michael Floyd is a much better option for sure. I don't know if I don't take him over Fitz at 6,600. But if you wanted to make a case for Fitz was a guy who was in a very good spot there, and then sort of the last 3 or 4 weeks, the targets and the volume sort of fell off. I don't know if he's getting extra defensive attention, but just 12 and 13 fantasy points in the past month are his high watermarks there as well.
I'm trying to save him for the playoffs.
That could be true. Oh. I mean, which is another reason for me to play Doug Baldwin over him in week 17. But I do love your Michael Floyd call, and if you wanted to even go John Brown,
I know I want to spend it running back, so I'd like to have one top tier receiver.
And then you want to go like cheap.
Right. Martavis Bryant, Michael Floyd, John Brown, Jordan Matthews. I think those guys have a lot of upside this week.
Antonio Bryant.
Right around 5.
Yeah.
Right around 5K.
Okay. All right. Antonio Bryant he's not listed on DraftKings.
I didn't do it again. I said it right that time.
Once they add him into the pool, he's like got to be 3K. So, and he's going to be a sleeper because no one's even scouting him right now.
That's right.
All right. So you made a good case. Do you want to talk about any of your bargain basement guys, or do you want to move on to tight end?
The only other one I'd mention is Marvin Jones. Again, I'm pretty in on the Bengals this week. I haven't. He's a riskier play, and again, if McCarron is active, I think Jones could have a nice kind of under the radar day. He's 3,700, and who's the other? Looks like Kellen Moore is going to play again for Dallas, and Terrence Williams again is only 3,300. He had 10 targets.
Wow. Okay. All right, that can make some sense.
He only caught 4 of them.
I wish I had more time to dive into the catchable ball stats on PFF, and look at how bad Kellen Moore performed in his targets.
It's hard to. I didn't watch that game at all, so I don't know whose fault that was.
No,
but 10 targets is a lot.
10 targets definitely is a lot. So you make a case. And I also heard whispers, and I don't know how true they are, about Des Bryant also, being potential rest candidate, being that had been, I guess, playing the rest of the season, even when he came back from the injury, at less than 100%. So I couldn't see that about him. He seems like a guy who always just wants to be on the field no matter what. But if that's the case, I don't even know if that would actually help Terrence Williams. And I would have presumed so, because if Jay Gruden ends up resting starters like we mentioned, then we could take more shares of Dallas Cowboys than we originally would. By the way, I like to call him Marvin Williams. He's a guy who's made my PFF article in 2 of the last weeks, either as an honorable mention or as a wide receiver punt play. So I'm with you for the most part. Sort of a underrated guy that people forget about, because Andy Dalton's been out of the lineup and AJ Green gets all the attention along with Tyler Eifert. So, all right, it is tight end King of the Hill time. Last time for the regular season here.
Oh my God! If you've learned anything from this game, it's don't use whoever ends up being the king of the hill, right?
Yeah. So once we filter it down to the top, you can decide for yourself why
third or fourth guy.
Right, why we are so wrong. Okay, you can decide where we went wrong and pivot from that. But we're gonna stick to our guns here. I was all in on Antonio Gates. I was
all in on Julius Thomas. Oh my God.
Yeah, neither of those guys behaved the way that we were told that they would behave. So they were bad boys. Let's go ahead and kick this off here. Will Ty at 4K, my superstar of week 16 here, a whopping 5.8 points on DraftKings. That was so close to winning me a GPP if I could add 2 zeros to that. But yeah, so he's on this list at 4K. He's at the very bottom. He's up against Austin Seferian-Jenkins at Carolina on the road. Tough matchup, but severely outperformed him with 14 fantasy points last week against the Chicago Bears. He's 4,200.
Yuck. We have to start here. All right. Neither of these guys is going to advance, I don't think. So sure. Whatever. I'll just say Seferian-Jenkins.
All right, I'm with you with Seferian-Jenkins. This is just a first round win. It's like when the whoever wins the play-in game in a tournament, you never worried about them winning the entire NCAA championship, right? They're just a play-in game. Austin Seferian-Jenkins or my guy who I've been riding in season long, Zach Miller.
Zach Miller, great spot for him this week. Who knows what the rest of the Chicago offense is going to look like health-wise by the end of the week, because we're recording early. But yeah, he seems to have developed a nice rapport and a nice role. Really looks more like the Martellus Bennett of old.
Right.
With the volume of catches he's getting.
In 3 straight weeks for Zach Miller on DraftKings. So fairly safe and reasonably priced at 4,600. Even more reasonably priced, some could say, Heath Miller at 3,300 against Cleveland or Zach Miller.
Zach Miller.
Okay. Zach Miller advances to the official tight end of all my Clay fantasy teams. It's Zach Ertz here. He's very cheap at 3,600 and performed
And caught a
very, very
touchdown
well.
last week, right?
Yeah, he
Oh,
did.
no, not last week.
Right. Maybe he can just change his Twitter profile from Zach Ertz apologist to Zach Ertz supporter or Team Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz fan club president. 27.2 fantasy points on DraftKings last week. Very nice performance. Best of the season and been trending upward. You take him over Zach Miller.
Ridiculous 17 targets, too, and 8 catches the previous week. He's got 3 really nice weeks in a row against the Giants. I'm kind of buying at this reduced price, so apologies to my name cousin, Zach Miller. I'll go with Ertz.
All right, fair enough.
For the first time, this is Zach Ertz's first King of the Hill win.
Yeah, I think he's been used to the loser lounge, and he finally made it out for the first time. I will say this: I don't expect 56 passes from Sam Bradford in week 17.
I don't know why not.
Well, I mean, I don't expect. I don't think the Giants can do what Washington did to them last week, is sort of blow them out at the first half and put them in full on passing mode. Their running game still is a mess, and with Ryan Masters and DeMarco Murray, so it's not like I feel like they figured anything out. I just don't see. In a road matchup. Well, I mean, I guess it is worse for Philly being on the road. But, if it's 56 pass attempts again, that's still a little bit high in my mind.
56 is a lot. But 40, 45, I think is,
sure, yeah.
is in the ballpark.
That target volume is a little bit crazy, too. I think it's a little bit of an outlier because he's been in single-digit targets 4 of the, past 5 games beforehand. So, like I said, trending upward.
7, 8 catches. It's a lot of volume.
It is going in the right direction. So that is for sure. And Nelson Aguilar is another guy too. Like I think he's sort of gone to the wayside, and Zach Ertz has replaced the volume and the production that they thought they were going to get out of their number 2 wide receiver that they drafted in the first round. So
which they never saw.
yeah. All right, Jason Witten, one of your oldie but goodie favorites here, who usually gets like an honorary first round win or second round win. But he's got a tough matchup against the Washington Redskins, potentially. They're 3,400 for Witten or Zach Ertz.
Yeah, I liked Witten last week. I thought he was the key to Kellen Moore looking good, and Dallas didn't get the memo, apparently, because Witten had just 2 targets. So that's why they looked like crap last week, I want to say. Witten has a great catch rate, but if he's going to be targeted twice, he's useless, completely useless.
All right, so that sounds like a win for Zach Ertz.
It is.
All right, Zach Ertz or Julius Thomas at 4,900.
Getting burned by Julius Thomas last week was so brutal. I mean, I had plenty of Allen Robinson shares too, but 2 for 12 yards, 0 touchdowns. I'm going to avoid the difficult matchup with Houston here and stick with the value of Ertz.
Okay. Zach Ertz or Travis Kelce, who made me look bad by scoring a touchdown after I said Cleveland defense plays great against the tight end. Back-to-back double-digit fantasy points for Travis Kelce, 16.3, his highest total since November 29th.
Right, and we know about the Oakland tight end defense, which I feel like hasn't allowed a touchdown in a while, but still manages to lead the league. They don't know now. The Lions lead the league in touchdowns allowed. Oakland's been holding steady at 11 touchdowns allowed to tight ends for a few weeks now. But this is still a good matchup. Kelce has his role. He does what he does. He catches, a high percentage of his 6 to 8 targets every week, and occasionally one of them goes for a touchdown. So I think he's a fine play. I'd rather take advantage of a discount on a guy like Ertz, who is seeing incredible volume and living up to the potential that he's had. I mean, Kelce is never going to see 13 targets. He's just not.
Okay, fair enough. So is that a win for Ertz?
Yep.
Okay. And for Ertz or tight end king of the hill, former winner, Antonio Gates, who burned us like toast in week 16 against
they all did, didn't they? Everyone I liked at tight end last week was awful. Except Reed. I'm sure we'll get to him. No, I'm not taking even if he is the primary receiving weapon against Denver. Ertz.
Yeah, tough matchup on the road at Denver, and you know what that means because we're both fading him. He's going to go for
Easy
150 and 3
touchdowns.
scores. Right. So there's your hidden pivot there. If you want to know the key to winning King of the Hill over us weekly, take the the pivot route with Antonio Gates at 4,800 because we're going Ertz in this spot. Gary Barnidge, 4,700 Cleveland at home against Pittsburgh here. Gary Barnidge, nothing very exciting the last couple of weeks with Johnny Manziel at the helm, just 7.7 fantasy points.
No, they don't seem to have the same
Josh McCown
rapport or, camaraderie or whatever. It's a nice spot for him. I wouldn't be surprised to see him have another touchdown, but the yardage isn't massive. Manziel's passing yardage, I don't think. I mean, in order to project a tight end to have a really big receiving day in terms of catches and yardage, you have to have a quarterback that can provide that kind of backdrop, and Manziel just isn't it. So, nope, sticking with Ertz.
All right, fair enough. Next man up here is Laney Walker, one of our favorites here, 5,600. Pretty pricey. They're one of the more expensive tight end. I think he's the second most expensive tight end. Yes, third most expensive at Indianapolis or Ertz.
He's fourth most at DraftKings. He depends on Mariota, and while Mariota's hurt with the knee, I'm not touching this offense.
Okay, fair enough. Sorry, yeah, I missed Jordan Reed in that projection here as well. So Zach Ertz or Ben Watson? 4,600 for Watson.
Yeah, Watson's cheaper too. Coming off a horrible game, but I do expect him to bounce back. I think that was a little flukish, and Drew Brees will probably want to avoid Trufant, which could increase Watson's value. I'm going to look back and see what he did. Yeah, he had one of his best games against Atlanta earlier this year. It might have been his breakout game, that 10 for 127 and a touchdown. Watson's in a nice spot. I haven't given him too much thought, but I think I'll go with Watson.
All right, interesting. Yeah, Watson performed well up until the Jacksonville Jaguars game there as well. So Ben Watson finally takes the reins from Zach Ertz. Rob Gronkowski here next up on the list, 7,400 at Miami.
Yeah, Gronk.
Okay, Gronk or Greg Olsen, 6,800 at Tampa Bay.
Gronk.
Okay, and the last one I'll mention too, for some reason outside the top 15, maybe this is probably related to Kirk Cousins here, but Jordan Reed, they're priced at 6,500.
Gronk.
All right, Rob Gronkowski. Now we know exactly who to fade.
Just desserts.
In week 17 there in your DFS lineups. All right, we're going to put a bow on the show here at the defense position. Some top options that we have: Denver defense at San Diego, they're 4K. Pittsburgh against Manziel on the road, 3,500. They're projected in the top two. We've got Carolina against Tampa Bay. We talked about our cheap stacks like Tennessee and Indianapolis. You can get Tennessee for the bargain price of 2,500 on defense there as well. Any other in Indianapolis, by the way, even cheaper than that at 2,400. If you're not a believer in Zach Bettenberger, anybody else you want to mention here?
Who else is worth mentioning? I think
you get Cincinnati at home against Baltimore and Ryan Mallett.
Yeah, that's nice. The Giants could be good too. Also at 2,400 at home. They've got a favorable giveaway takeaway ratio, and again, I think in a high scoring shootout game, a lot of people avoid the defense because of the high score. But I have come around to the idea that creates a lot of opportunities for interceptions and fumbles. So not avoiding the Giants. The Jets in Buffalo, I mean, the Jets defense is really strong. Buffalo doesn't turn the ball over a ton. No, I'm more sticking with the ones you said at the beginning.
Okay. And then one last thing I want to mention too is Ryan Tannehill has been pretty bad. I mean, he hasn't exactly been turning over the ball for the most part, but that offense cannot get anything done. It's been just a little bit of Lamar Miller and a whole lot of nothing else in terms of scoring overall. So for no other reason than New England is up against a severely struggling offense. There, I could see a case for New England D in this matchup here in week 17 as well. And just for reference to, you get New England for 3,200 on DraftKings, which is, I think, has been projected about the 10th or 11th overall in the optimizer. And that's going to wrap it up for today's show. Before we go, Renee, we want to quickly mention any articles or pieces that you have coming up here towards the rest of the week.
I'm working on my Flex article where I talk about safe plays, high upside plays, and value plays that you can use at your flex spot to kind of balance out depending on how you've built the rest of your lineup for DraftKings. That'll be out on ESPN tomorrow. And I have contrarian plays and bargain plays. I'm probably going to post both of those tomorrow because I'm traveling to the West Coast for the New Year. So those will be up on Roto World tomorrow. And then my DraftKings plays, just kind of my kind of all-purpose DraftKings plays, will be up on Pro Football Focus on Friday.
All right. For me, I will be on 120 Sports doing some video talking about FanDuel wide receiver plays. So if you're looking for an elite evaluate or punt option, we'll break those down on live video. You can check out on 120sports.com and the 120 Sports app. You can check out my Week 17 wide receiver and running back punt article coming out this Saturday at PFF. And you can also check out the RotoWire DFS podcast for Saturday. We'll be talking about ownership percentages and the top plays based on those coming up for the Thursday FanDuel GPPs. That podcast will be airing late Friday or Saturday. And that's going to wrap it up for today's show. Thanks for listening to the Daily Slant brought to you by DraftKings.com, the #1 daily fantasy sports site, America's favorite. Don't forget you can subscribe to PFF Radio on iTunes, listen on Stitcher, Blog Talk Radio, watch the show on the official YouTube channel for PFF and the Fantasy Sports Network. Thanks as always to the best co-host in the business, Renee Miller, for her expert insight. Don't forget to follow her on Twitter at ReneeMiller01 and send all your comments and complaints and questions to me on Twitter at JoshHayesFS. Good luck in all your Week 17 matchups. We'll see you next time.